Welcome to the Tom Matt Show. You are walking through the front door of the retirement zone. And now, your host, Tom Matt.
Last week, David DeMarco was back, the Mad Dog. That was hilarious, talking about all kinds of fun stuff. David D will become more of a regular on this show because now that he is living in his retirement zone of Alabama, in Cedar Bluff, Alabama, to be specific, and we're doing the Mad Dog Minutes, and Jamie White's helping us with sponsoring the radio show, and he's sponsoring the Minutes. I mean, that's been the plan all along, is to continue to bring you guys great content on video, on radio, on whatever we do. So, and I want to say hello to Jason Munchay, who listens to the show, a regular fan of the show. And Jay, I'll take all your advice anytime you want to give me advice. I'll take your advice anytime, always. All right. And that's a little inside joke. So he knows exactly what I'm talking about as I talk about this on radio. Today, my friend, my brother from another mother, another brother from another mother, Dr. Anthony Avellino. I call him Tony. You can call him Stickball Man. You can call him whatever the hell you want. You know, his kids call him Dad. Jen calls him later. I don't. Then Jen don't. And she wouldn't be offended anyway. She's hilarious. She's awesome too. But I call him Tony, Dr. T, whatever you want to call him. He's my bro, and he's here. I'm not even going to do his bio because we've done his bio enough, and he's been on the show. Like, this is his 10th visit, I believe, something like that. I didn't even count him up. But this is only the second time that we've done this performance living concept topic, and this is going to become big for us. It's going to be really big. And Tony and I have kind of brainstormed on this, and it's like it's in his wheelhouse, in my wheelhouse, and it's in your best interest to really pay attention to what Tony's got to say for us. So, without much further ado, Dr. Anthony Avellino. Tony, how you liking this performance living concept? You like this?
Tom, it's fantastic. I would say that our series on performance living is actually really important because, as you and I discussed many times before, one of our passions is really how to get people to optimize their performance in mind, body, and spirit. As we discussed, you have to listen, you have to learn, you have to heal. But most importantly, is if you come back to our equation, performance equals skill minus interference. And I think that equation is going to be a theme that you and I are going to be doing over and over again, because I think in order to perform at your highest level, regardless, you can have all the skill in the world, but if you can't block out your interference, whatever that interference is, if you're not mentally prepared, if you're not mentally well, if you're not happy and satisfied, if you're not doing purposeful work, if you're not in healthy relationships, if you're not showing compassion and love for yourself, it's very challenging to be your actually best. And so I'm very excited because what you do is raise an awareness and for people to get better and better and better. So
I look forward to us doing more and more of this. You're getting better and better at this yourself. And, you know, it's just, we've kind of hit a sweet spot. And in the world today, Tony, especially post-COVID, all of these topics that we're going to cover from your perspective as a physician, as a long-term surgeon, as a neurosurgeon, pediatric neurosurgeon, dealing with families, dealing with kids, because when you deal with your patients, you're dealing with the whole family, because obviously you work on, you're a pediatric neurosurgeon. And so all of these topics that we're going to be covering are very applicable. I'd like to ask you though, before we jump into your topic, it's like, how hard is that conversation that you have with parents when you're doing your diagnosis, your surgeries? I mean, that's got to be a big part of your performance. I mean, and again, you go back into our equation, you know, when you get rid of the interference, but you've got to take into account all of that emotional. How do you balance that out in your life? I mean, how is it, can you disconnect from stuff like that?
Yeah, I would say that it doesn't get easier because as a pediatric neurosurgeon, what keeps me up at night is not the hundreds of kids or hundreds of patients and their families that actually have a great outcome, but it's those one or two every year that the neurological disease is something that you can't cure, or you do your best and you make an honest mistake. But really getting back to we are humans, it's an incredible opportunity to take care of a child and their family, because helping someone from wellness to illness to wellness is an incredible opportunity. And I learn more from my patients, because in children, their ability to get better, their ability to be resilient is truly incredible. But it goes back to the power of the human spirit. And I must say that I've been doing this for a long time, but every interaction I have, I always treat the child or the patient and their family like my own. And it really gets back to that performance equation. Because if you're not in the moment, if you're not at peace with yourself, if you're not recharging, if you're not taking care of yourself, it's really difficult to perform at that highest level.
That's so spot on, and so that leads us into your very top of your bullets. Talk about how to be elite and all of those things that go into that. And if you have an issue in your life, everybody, and I guarantee you that you will have issues in your life. So what Dr. Avellino is going to be sharing with us in our Performance Living series of episodes is exactly this: how to be elite, how to train the body. I'm going to let you just talk about this, Tony. We got about a minute and a half before we go to break, and I got to set up the next segment. So go right ahead, kind of set this thing up and tell everybody where we're going with today's episode.
So for today, having a conversation about mental health, because I often say that a healthy mind, a healthy brain is just as important as a healthy body. And in order to be elite, or in order to be at your best, regardless of what type of work you do, you have to train your body, you have to train your craft, and you have to train your mind. And so for today, really going through raising awareness of mental illness, raising awareness of mental health, is actually very important, because I often say is that people that know my story is one of the major reasons why I'm doing this, because I don't want anyone to ever hit rock bottom and be at the brink of suicide as I was, because you have to listen, you have to learn, you have to heal.
And that's the key. That's the key to everything, everybody. You have to listen, learn, and heal. And something that Tony just said, and I'm going to carry this through, Tony, because we're going to come up to break here and I'll reset all of this. But Tony was just talking about to become elite, to be elite. And how do we get people to optimize their health? And how do we get people to perform when the chips are down? Not always when the chips are up, because we have plenty of that in our world where, these moments of euphoria and joy. That's great. And I'm obviously totally down with all of that. But it's the bottom side of that curve that you have to understand. And what Tony will share with us going forward with these Performance Living episodes will be his story, because he's very open about his own mental health journey. And when we come back from break, everybody, we'll talk about and start with brain and mental health from a doctor's perspective, from a pediatric neurosurgeon's perspective, from Dr. Anthony Avellino's perspective. Again, Performance Living. This chapter we're going to call Brain Health, Mental Health, with my very good friend, my brother from another mother, Dr. Anthony Avellino. I call him Tony. His kids call him Dad, and Jen calls him, I don't even know what. Take out the garbage. You're listening to The Tom Matt Show.
This segment of The Tom Matt Show is brought to you in part by The Source of Light and Power by band leader Archibald and broadcaster Mitch Anderson. Hear the sound that is endorsed by Odyssey headphones, linear tube audio, RME converters, and Peluso microphones at sourceoflightandpower.bandcamp.com. This is the Tom Matt Show.
The second segment of the Tom Matt Show is sponsored by Craig Stiles from Ameriprise Financial, your Ameriprise Financial Advisor and our Ameriprise Financial Advisor. So happy. And I rarely look at our Craig, don't be upset if he hears me saying this, but I rarely go on the website of Ameriprise, which is really easy to navigate. It's really, really great. But it's like, I trust him so much, and we have so many other things going on with the people that I'm working with, and then doing radio, and then coming up with topics like we're doing with Dr. Avellino today on performance living. It's great to be able to hand these things off to these professionals, because Craig Stiles is our guy, and he has all of our retirement zone savings. He can help you plan for the life you want today and well into the future. Call Craig at 1-800-528-1355 or 517-483-4893. His email is craig.stiles@ampf.com. Offices are located at 2400 Lake Lansing Road. Suite B is in Brilliant, or B is in Lansing, Michigan 48912. Don't let that dissuade you from getting a hold of Craig, everybody. Use the 800 number, but use the email. Use my website, tommattshow.com, and click through there and find him on the homepage there. Because Ameriprise Financial is a massive company. They're huge, and they're there to serve the whole country. So Craig can vet all of the people that are over there. And let me tell you, the Decideri Analytics angle that Craig has created, his proprietary algorithm where we are making light of weighted decisions, amazing. Takes all the guesswork out of everything. All right, some of the stations that are carrying us, have carried us, will carry us. In the past, I mentioned all these stations, and the Michigan Talk Network has 40 stations strong, and things change with broadcast radio all the time. So I'm just grateful to any station that's ever carried us. If you've heard our voice on broadcast radio, then thank you. WGHN 92.1 FM in Grand Haven was our first. WJIM 1240 AM in Lansing, Michigan is the flagship of the Michigan Talk Network. So proud to be on Steve and Ivy Gruber's property there. They've been syndicating us for 5-6 years now. WJRW 1340 AM in Grand Rapids, WKLQ 1490 Muskegon, Whitehall, WYPV FM 94.5 in Mackinac City, up in the northern part of the Mitten State, and of course our PBS affiliate at Michigan State University, WKAR AM 870 and 102.3 FM. Remember, we do have 4 books on Amazon, Generation Us being the latest, and I'll tell you what, the Maximize Your Quality of Life book, I have had younger people getting back to me who find that book to be very enthralling. As a matter of fact, my dental hygienist yesterday she's re-gifting my book that I sent to her, Emily Roberts. I mentioned I did a video with her name this morning, Tony, and I'll tell you what, the notes that she gave me these 2 thank you cards, and how impactful this book was, my very first book, and how it helped her become inspired. It is so inspirational to get feedback like that. It's crazy. When you talk to your former patients and your former the parents of patients, the feedback that you get must be just enthralling for you, Tony. I mean, when you help people and you bring people back from the deathbed, what's that? How does that affect your soul?
I must say, getting cards or letters from patients that I treated in the past truly resonates very, very deeply with my soul, because it validates, even though being a physician or being a nurse is tough, you have these trials and tribulations of life, but it validates that what you're doing is good. Because as you and I discussed many times before, it's not what you take in this world, but it's how you give back. And I would say that your Tom Matt radio show truly increases awareness and teaches others the mistakes that you and I have made. Because like I said at the beginning, I don't want anyone to hit rock bottom and be at the brink as I was. And I often learned that the road to a healthier, more purposeful life requires that you listen to discover your life's journey, learn from your failures, and then take the steps to heal. And I think that's really important, because oftentimes you have to listen, you have to learn, you have to heal, but learning and healing aren't the same. You can learn from your failures, but you have to heal. And I would say that one of my mentors always used to tell me, you have to have this 24-hour rule. After 24 hours, you just have to let it go. Because if you just stew on it, it just creates this repetitive negative thoughts in your mind, which is not healthy.
I call it the negative energy tornado, Tony. I mean, that's the whole thing. I had to come up with my own little tag for that. And that's exactly right. The 24-hour rule, sports franchises do the same thing. Professional athletes do the same thing. Professionals across the board. Yeah, you got 24 hours to bask in the glory or sulk. And after that, move on. All right, let's talk about point number 1 here, brain/mental health. Go ahead, Tony. Let's get this thing going here. Why did you choose this as your topic and the opener for this episode?
Brain and mental health is a really important thing in the world. And if there's listeners that are listening today that are in crisis, it's important to know that you can call the number 988, which is the suicide and crisis line. And but as you mentioned in the beginning, Tom, the COVID-19 global pandemic has made many of us experience fear, anxiety, and depression due to the isolation, lack of structure, financial uncertainty, new work from home realities, childcare pressures, and working long hours. But these stresses have all impacted our mental health and overall well-being. In fact, during the pandemic, 4 in 10 adults in the United States have reported symptoms of anxiety or a depressive. And if you look at the stats, because I think it's really important to go through the stats. Every 40 seconds, a person dies by suicide somewhere in this world. 1 in 5 struggle from a mental illness. It could be anyone. It could be an athlete, it could be a lawyer, cook, professor, sanitation worker, doctor, musician, teacher, anyone. 25% of young adults aged 18 to 25 have some history of a mental illness. The serious mental illnesses in America cost over $193 billion in lost earnings per year. But if you look at the stats, though, because I think it's really important to look at the stats, suicide is the 11th leading cause of death in the United States, second leading cause of death for those aged 10 to 34 years. There's one suicide every 11 minutes. And so this is truly a public health crisis, and removing the stigma and having a conversation about it. And I know that today's episode is challenging for some, but if you're listening and you're in a challenged state, just remember that Suicide and Crisis Lifeline 988.
All right, hold that thought, Tony, because I'm going to take this thing to break here. We got a couple of seconds to go, and then we'll wrap this thing. Let me reset this, everybody. This is another of our new topic category on the radio show. In our evolution of the Tom Matt Show, I want to come up with new topics, new energy, new ways of delivering excellent content to you. We're calling this Performance Living with Dr. Avellino. Comes in. Tony's going to be much more regular on the show to talk about these topics from his perspective as a pediatric neurosurgeon. Today, brain health, mental health, how it affects our performance and our living. How do people optimize their health? With Dr. Avellino, this is the Tom Matt Show.
Thank you again to our Segment 2 sponsor, Craig Stiles of Ameriprise Financial. For more information on services provided by Craig, please visit ameripriseadvisors.com/Craig.Stiles or by calling 517-483-4893.
Third segment of the Tom Matt Show is sponsored by Jamie White, White Law PLLC, where justice meets compassion. So happy. Got our first interview with Jamie and his story of building his business and the entrepreneurial aspect of that. I'm looking so forward. Similar to what we're doing with this episodes with Dr. Avellino, Performance Living, Brain Health, Mental Health. When we do the law and we start talking about law talk and the things with Jamie, that's why Jamie's a sponsor of the show, and he's a sponsor of David Mad Dog DeMarco's Mad Dog Minutes, which is really cool too. White Law is your advocate in times of need. We are all here to help you. We are here to listen. We are here to support, and we are here to fight for what you deserve. And Jamie is the man when it comes to all of our legal anything to do with legal, law, we're going with Jamie. You can contact White Law today for a free consultation. And remember, he's got like a network of hundreds of attorneys across the country. So if he doesn't handle this specific aspect, he'll take any call at any time. And if he doesn't do it, he knows somebody who does. That's what makes White Law very specific. And they're very intellectually savvy. They're very technologically savvy. And that's a really cool thing. And that's what we talked about in his first episode as well. We'll definitely be hitting that. So call 517-777-9785. You can also go to the bottom of our homepage, tommattshow.com, at the very bottom of the homepage, and find all of our sponsors, Craig, Jamie, and Brock. All three of them are there. To be a sponsor on this program, you have to go through a very detailed vetting process, and you have to add value. And that's the whole thing. We don't just sell time. We give information freely. And that's the way it works. And without our sponsors, we cannot do this. We cannot do this show. And we can't bring you a superstar like a Dr. Anthony Avellino, who gives up his very, very valuable time to come into the programming. Tony, before we jump into mind-body syndrome, I had a question that I wanted to ask you. Have you ever done the number on your number of years you were in medical school or in college, just specific? Have you ever come up with was it 20 years? Was it 15? How long was it from undergrad all the way through everything, fellowships and in continuing education? I mean, we both know it's lifelong, but the very specific as a traditional student, how long was that track?
I finished my residency when I was 34 years of age. So after high school, it was 4 years of college, 4 years of medical school. That's 8 years. Then my training was 8 plus 1. So 16, 17 years of training. But
there you go.
But there's a lot of delayed gratification. But I must say that the value that one brings and the happiness and joy to really shepherd a child or their family through that illness to wellness is an incredible opportunity. And I'm biased, but as a pediatric neurosurgeon, there is no other better feeling that really helping someone get well again. Because at the end of the day, having your physical and mental health is really important.
And now that you've got 20 years as a physician under your belt or thereabouts, since you finished school at the age of 34, your skill set's even better. I mean, it's a acquired knowledge and how we deal with these things. That's why we're doing this. Did you ever think you'd become a radio star?
I would say no, but what I would say, Tom, is you make your guests look great, and your ability to effectively interview someone and really bring out the essence of someone's passion and the learnings is truly an incredible gift.
Thank you. That's, it's all about the story, Tony, and that's the whole thing about this. And let's jump into this B bullet that we have here, the mind-body syndrome. Take it from there. I'm really interested to hear your perspective on all of this. This is a pretty deep portion of this interview. And again, just resetting, if you just joined us, everybody, Dr. Avellino's with us. This is one of our performance living category topics that we're going to be doing much more of these things. Today, the chapter for today is brain health, mental health. Talk about mind-body syndrome. Would you please, Tony?
The one thing that attracts me to neuroscience is if you look at the brain, it's a totally unexplored. We know very little about the brain. I would say less than we actually know how people move their arms and legs. But what's fascinating to me is I often say what cardiovascular care the last 30 years is what neuroscience care will because I remember when I began medical school is heart transplants and endovascular stenting for hearts was just at its infancy. And as we have more of these studies to explore the brain and find out how the brain works with all these imaging studies such as functional MRI scan, PET CT scans, we are going to be able to find out more and more and more because the brain is very unexplored, but also it has an incredible degree of neuroplasticity because the brain is always, the circuits are always reworking themselves. To get back of the brain and mental health, the mind is our best friend, but it also can be our worst enemy. What I mean by that is the mind has an incredible effect on someone's perception of pain. Because I often say that as someone goes through the journey of life, you have pain. And I often break down pain in really, you have a structural type of pain and you have a non-structural. And what I mean by that is if you break your arm or you fall or you bruise yourself, you can actually have this structural type of pain, that the pain from being injured goes back to your brain, and so you can perceive that. But the thing that's even more fascinating is how we this non-structural pain, which is non-visible pain, such as if you're depressed, if you have anxiety, and in the varieties of mental health. But like I said, mind is our best friend. For example, when you learn to play the piano or swing a golf club, your brain cells are developing new pathways that are connected to your body, thousands of nerve cells. And the more that you practice, the more that these nervous system pathways get activated, and the more practice you become, the greater skill you actually have. Exactly what you and I are doing, because the more that we develop these podcasts, we are continuously learning, the pathways are developing, and hopefully we're making a difference.
Well, I would jump in and let me reset this time. We're going to come up on break here. Let me kind of get everybody caught up. Performance living is our new topic on the radio show, everybody. It's one of our new topic categories because I found such a talented person with my good friend, Dr. Tony Avellino, and we came up with this together, and we're going to do these different chapters. But what Tony was just talking about with the learned pathway, I learned about this with myelin and good fats and the fatty acids that you have and all of the training. And Malcolm Gladwell wrote about this in several of his books with learning skills. And there's a lot of variables that go into the learned pathway. And you can have it for good and you can have it for bad as well, because if you have pain, you're going to have what, as Tony just described, the learned pathway. The myelin sheath has already been wrapped around whatever that nerve, whatever that pain source is going directly to your brain and telling you that's pain. And that's the way it works. And the interruption of that signal is the things that we're talking about here. Again, Performance Living, Brain Health, Mental Health with Dr. Anthony Avellino. This is The Tom Matt Show.
Thank you again to our segment 3 sponsor, White Law PLLC, where justice meets compassion. White Law is your advocate in times of need. We are here to listen, support, and fight for what you deserve. Contact White Law today for your free consultation. Visit us at whitelawpllc.com or call 517-777-9785. This is The Tom Matt Show.
Hope you're enjoying our new performance living category topics on the radio show with Dr. Anthony Avellino. I'm enjoying doing these. They're going to get better. And if you have any suggestions for us on this, if you have questions, you can always send us a note. I'll give you the website here in a little while. You know, it's always tommattshow.com, but we'll do a plug for that. The plug I want to do right now is for our 4th segment sponsor, which is Brock. We've got Craig, Jamie, and Brock. Those are our 3. They're the all-stars. They're the ones who help us get this thing going. Brock Fletcher at the selling team of Keller Williams Realty, which, full disclosure, all of you know, Yeah, unless you're new to the show. And if you're new to the show, here's the disclaimer that I do, full disclosure. Brock helped us sell Big House Holt when we downsized, and through Mike Dedman's action. How you doing, Mikey? Mikey was our buyer's agent who was on the team at the selling team of Keller Williams to help us buy Little House Lansing, which we just love this place so much. We love our home in Wisconsin. We love our kids over there and all that. But I'll tell you what, this place in Lansing is so awesome. Lansing, Michigan is the home of the refinement zone. So that's all there is to it. You can call Brock. A couple of numbers coming at you here, everybody. 517-853-6408. Or here's the big one. I'll give this one to you twice. You ready? 517-303-3262. 517-303-3262. That is the cell phone to his pocket. He changes his messages daily. We'll tell you when he's going to return the call, and away you go. You can go online to kwsellingteam.com. Things are loosening up, and we just had our year-end review with Brock. And you probably, if you missed that episode on the Reality of Real Estate, just go to the website, tommattshow.com, go to Reality of Real Estate, which has its own little tile, and you can just click on that and get his recap, because there's big changes that are coming that are going to help home buyers, young people, older people that want to downsize, get into the market, get out of the market, whatever you're going to be doing. You want to list with Brock because he's the guy who invests in his marketing way ahead of time, before selling your home, before getting your listing, before any of that. He is on your, he just wants to sell your home, and he wants to take care of you, and you can trust these people because we did, and we want you to, just like we say with all of our sponsors. Again, go to our website, tommattshow.com, bottom of the homepage, and click on the banners for our people, and away you go. All right, back to our interview with Dr. Avellino doing our performance living. I'm going to really like these a lot. These are just awesome. And I'm going to jump back to, we were talking about mind-body syndrome and its relation to the perception of pain. We're talking about the pain is caused by a learned pathway. Tony, you want to pick it up from there? I brought up myelin. I like to throw out the little bit of knowledge that I have with neurogenesis, neuroplasticity, and myelin. Those are my top three, and the rest of it's up to you.
Yeah, there is a good book by Dan Coyle. Not sure if you read the book called The Talent Code.
Absolutely. I interviewed Dan on that book, actually.
Oh, you did? Oh,
yep,
okay.
Long time ago.
Yeah, because, since you brought up the myelin, because the one thing that Dan Coyle in his book says that in order to actually have talent, you really need three things. You have to have that deep practice. It requires that commitment, then 10,000 hours to develop that skill. And the more you practice, the more that pathways are learning, the more that the myelin gets formed, it gets greater. But two is you actually have to have that ignition. What I mean by that is you have to be passionate about what you do. Because if you're not passionate about who you want to be, you're not going to be your best. But third is what he says is you have to have a coach. Because I know that I didn't get to where I am today if I didn't have coaching and along the way. But if you combined all of them, even for 6 minutes, Dan Coyle says things begin to change. And so even though the talent is sometimes it's good because learning to play the piano or swinging a golf club or doing whatever talent that you want to do is important, but it also can have a negative effect because the mind, like I said, it could be your best friend, but it could be your worst enemy. And the pain caused by these learned pathways, I think it's really important because if you look in the world today, the incidence of chronic pain, irritable bowel syndrome, headaches, anything in the world of chronic pain, I describe it as you actually have this feedback loop. And so you get this pain, you get anxiety, and it just, and the loop keeps on going round and round and round, and it gets ingrained. And I often say, in order to get out of that pain pathway is you really have to break that loop.
How do we do that? How do we break that loop? How is what from your perspective? That's a really good explanation of this. But are there ways and are there examples that you have with this mind-body syndrome? How's this going to happen for you?
Yeah. So three examples that I'll give is if I have a patient that has neck and arm pain and he has bone spurs in his neck, or you do the operation, his neck and arm pain get resolved, but 1 year later, the arm pain or neck pain reoccurs, but you actually get an MRI scan. It doesn't show any more bone spurs. It doesn't show any more scar tissue. But upon further discussion with him, you realize that he's been having severe, unrelenting anxiety or negative thoughts and marriage. And so really understanding his mental state at that time, because I often say that my pain from depression is worse than a physical injury in that I can't sleep, I can't think clearly, I can't make decisions, I can't eat, I have shoulder pain, I have bad thoughts, and really that sort of feedback loop. For that first example, if that patient underwent some cognitive therapy, and the arm pain resolved once his anxiety and his marriage concerns. So it gets back to that performance equals skill minus interference. You can have all the skill in the world, but if you can't block out that interference, if you're not in the present, if you're not mentally prepared, if you're not happy and satisfied, if you're not in healthy relationships, if you're not in the presence, it's going to be very difficult.
There you go. I mean, and that's the whole thing with the mental health, everybody. So do not have that. Don't think that you have to have that anxiety about going into mental health. Oh, I'm broken. And that's part of the problem with the stigma of seeking mental health. People who have not gone through mental health. I'm such an advocate for mental health and how it helped me at first get through the drinking issue, and then became more and more relevant to all of our family issues. That yes, this learned pain that Tony's talking about. I've read about this, Tony, where people can suffer from back pain, and it can manifest. The pain,
shoulder pain,
can manifest. Yeah, the phantom pain. It can manifest in different areas, right?
Oh yeah, the phantom limb pain is real, because when someone has their limb amputated due to compromised blood supply, or prior to the amputation, the limb is very painful because what happens is if the blood supply is less, you don't get enough oxygen, enough food to that limb, and you have pain. But once that limb is removed, up to 60% of patients really feel the pain as though the limb was still there, because you've sort of learned that. So when you have that, when you have the limb and you have diabetes, you have that constant pain. It's that feedback pain loop. You're constantly learning those negativity. And as you often told me, is in this world you have to exist with positivity, because if you think you're going to do it, you will do it. Because I often say, as Walt Disney used to say, if you can dream it, you can do it.
Exactly. And so in your notes, you talked about, you use a really good analogy with a sophisticated computer that's programmable. Talk about that little, you got about 30 seconds to go, so I don't want to lead you down the road too far, but that word that you use, I want to share, you go ahead and use that word you have there in the quotation marks.
Yeah, because as you learn good things, you learn bad things, but it's how you deprogram the bad things, how you deal with your repetitive negative thoughts is really important. So in the next segment, we can go through that, how you can deal with your repetitive negative thoughts.
And look at how good we're getting at this thing. I mean, Tony doesn't even have the clock in front of him like I do, and he's already feeding me in the next segment. That's how, we're learning here. We're getting better, and that's what we want to do with performance living. We want to make this the best that we can be. I have meetings set up. Tony doesn't even know about the meetings that I have set up with some of his colleagues at Michigan State University. I'll talk to everybody about this, because everybody wants in on this thing. Once I got Tony invited to the party, they all wanted in on the party. Performance living, brain health, mental health. Dr. Avellino's here. You're listening to Tom Matt Show.
Thank you again to our segment 4 sponsor, Brock Fletcher, real estate agent at the selling team with Keller Williams Realty. For more information on services provided by Brock, please call his personal cell phone at 517-303-3262 or by emailing Brock at kwsellingteam.com. This is the Tom Matt Show.
I want to remind everybody in the fifth segment of this radio program podcast, if you're listening to this on the broadcast, you're probably picking this up on AM 870 WKAR, a PBS affiliate. I'd like to say any other PBS affiliates that are in the country that would like to pick up our show, feel free. We will absolutely send you the packages that we want to do here and let you have it. There is no cost to our PBS affiliates whatsoever, and we just want to get our word out. Performance Living is huge, and we're going to make this even better. I want to do plug time for Dr. Avellino. Dr. Tony's here with us, my bro. Tony, how would you like people to connect with you? You're available for speaking. You're available for coaching. You're available for all kinds of things, teaching. You're a multifaceted cat. That's why we hang so well together, because we like doing lots and lots of things. How do you want people to get a hold of you? And just let everybody know what you're available to do for them. Go right ahead, please.
Sure. My journey is outlined on my website. It's findingpurposeavellino.com. And I welcome any feedback. My email address is findingpurpose37@gmail.com. And as Tom said, Tom and I are all about how we can help others be their best. And so we are always available to come in, develop lectures, developing all sorts of workshops and things that Tom and I really love to actually do, because at the beginning of the show, you mentioned how I get great gratification of helping a child and their family go from wellness to illness back to, and what you and I are really passionate about is how to get people to be their best. So please reach out to us, and we are very, very happy to help.
Let's talk about where you led us into. So you did such a great job with that segue at the end of the previous segment, dealing with repetitive negative thoughts. How do we deal with this? We've talked about the learned, the phantom pain. We've talked about a lot of things that go in with brain health and mental health, and pain is a huge issue in our country because people want to use medications to try to deal with these pain. I get it. I understand totally. How can we help people, Tony? How can you, as a neurosurgeon, how do we help people understand dealing with repetitive negative thoughts? Go right ahead, please.
There's bad ways to do it, as you and I have been through, and there's very good ways to do it too. So let's start with how people deal with repetitive negative thoughts. There's a host of bad ways to do it. One is you could suffer. What I mean by that is when you suffer, you have the same set of thoughts over and over again, and it's that process that clearly reinforces the given neurological circuit. So if you complain, if you argue, manipulate, if you gossip, you have these repetitive thoughts resulting in this anger and spinning, impossible to let go. And that oftentimes leads to depression, anxiety. And so that's one way. Two is people can suppress their negative thoughts, like I often did, playing my, you put your head down and move on. You try to ignore the problem, but if more you ignore the problem gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And third is, as you and I both been through, is you can mask it. You cover up your uncomfortable emotions. You cover up your uncomfortable emotions, such as being an addict, drugs, alcohol, cigarettes, work, gambling, getting caught up in a good cause, hoarding, excessive involvement in hobbies such as ultra running. And so you and I are guilty of all these things, but there's often good ways how to modify that pain too.
Well, that the whole thing with, and I'd like to jump in and just talk about getting caught up in a good cause and why I've done speaking engagements before hundreds and hundreds of nurses at big conventions. Who fills their bucket? Because they're all caregivers, but then they don't give to themselves. They don't love themselves. And that's the whole thing about the masking, as Tony was just talking about. Tony, let's move on to modifying pain and changing the body chemistry. That's we're We're on a good roll here in helping people understanding. And this part of the episode, everybody, we're talking about, we started the show with talking about brain and mental health and all of these issues that go along with pain and phantom pain, dealing with negative thoughts. Now we're going to get into the modifying the pain, the changing of the body chemistry. Can you, Dr. Avellino, can you talk about that for a second and just kind of enlighten everybody as to what they might want to know?
Sure. When patients have all these repetitive negative thoughts, is you have to modify that neural circuit. You have to modify that pain. You have to change your chemistry within your body and brain. And there's a variety of ways that you can actually do that. I would argue that sleep is one of the most important things that you can do. Because the less sleep you have, the more pain you'll have. So I often ask people, how many hours of sleep do they actually get? And I'm often surprised. People get 4 hours, 6 hours, 8 hours. I would argue that getting more than 7, 8 hours of sleep is really important. 2 is you have to forgive. You have to find happiness. You have to let go of that anger. You have to let go of that anxiety. And I often say is, do you do one thing every week that brings you a sense of purpose, a sense of peace? It could be gardening. It could be prayer. It could be exercise. It could be knitting. It could be painting. But often ask yourself, did you do one thing every day that brings you peace? Because as you, Tom said, is you have to have that ability to recharge. Because as you go through the journey of life, right, we climb. And I often say you have to have that ability to pause and recharge. And so really finding that your happiness or your joy, whatever it is, reinforces that. It calms down your nervous system. Because what you want to do is you want to calm down that nervous system. You want to deprogram the negativity.
I really like what you have here in your find happiness. I'm looking at these notes here. Find happiness, forgiveness, sense of meaning, purpose, peace. And then in your quotation marks, you have a quote from you. You are the only one responsible for your own happiness. When you wrote that, what were you thinking? I mean, because I know you've reflected a lot upon your own personal journey. And if you want to fill in the blanks here, we got about 3 or 4 minutes to go before we wrap the episode, Tony. If you want to talk about your depth that you went through with your own personal journey, please go right ahead. I mean, you've been very open about your life's story. Go ahead. You tell the story, please.
Yeah. So for me is as you go through the journey of life, I got burnt out. And I didn't know the signs and symptoms of it. And so one of the reasons why you and I are doing these performance living is really raising awareness and giving people the ability. Because I often say, if I knew today 30 years ago, I'd be a lot more at peace. But I think the what you said, Tom, you are the only one responsible for your happiness. Because I often say is you get to choose what type of day you have. You get to choose what type of day you have. So tomorrow morning, when you wake up, you're going to say, I'm going to have a great day. Some days are better than others. But if you wake up, you're angry with your spouse, your kids, your dog, something goes right, you're going to go to work, you're going to be angry and your whole day's shot. So again, if you, it gets back to those learned repetitive negative thoughts. Oh, poor me. And if you keep on saying that throughout the day, your day is going to be bad, but you have to. It's a lot easier said than done, but how you deprogram, how you find peace, how you stay in the present moment is really important.
Tony, do you remember when I said that the early morning thing that I do every morning? We first got to be friends years ago, and I told you about my first thing I do every morning, and you were like, you do that every day? And I said, yeah, every day. You wake up and you have a grateful moment, and then you do a stretch. That displaces what Tony was just talking about, where this thing can spin, the rumination, and you get through this immediately because you don't let that thing take root. And that's the whole point. Tony, I need to get a wrap because we're going to run out of time here, and I'd like to get your takeaway on our latest Performance Living episode, Brain Health, Mental Health. What's your takeaway from today's episode?
I would say that we must all listen, learn, and hear with each other to achieve a healthier, peaceful, and purposeful life with optimum performance in mind, body, spirit. We must remember we are never alone, and we must find hope even in the darkest moments, for the lessons learned can give us insights how to bring light to others. Because I often say it's one of the most powerful things that you can do, helping someone getting through some type of mental illness or mental crisis, is take off your doctor's cap and truly listen. Because I often say you can truly save a life by listening.
Give your contact information one more time, please. Plug your book and your website, and then we will wrap this thing.
Yeah, my website is findingpurposeavellino.com. And my website outlines my journey. And if you want to buy my book, it's there. My email is findingpurpose37@gmail.com.
His name is Dr. Anthony Avellino. He's my friend. He's a very good friend. He's our talent for the Performance Living episodes that we're going to be doing. This one focused on brain health. If you missed any portion of this episode, everybody, we always got the podcast for you. You can go to our website, tommattshow.com. These are in the medical miracles topic in there. We're going to create our own little space for performance living because Dr. Avellino and his knowledge is so valuable. Tony, thank you so much for being with us today.
You're very welcome, Tom. And thank you for all the great work that you are doing, because I would say that many people lives are changing because of your radio show. So thank you for what you do.
Thank you, sir. Always remember, before you can share love with others, you must love yourself first. Thanks again to Tony, Sandy, Craig, Brock, Jamie, David DeMarco. We'll talk to everybody next weekend. Have a great week, everybody. Go out and ignite your life. Have a great day. Remember, Tom Matt Show's a production of Boomers Rock Media. We want to bring your story to life. Thank you again to Mitch Anderson. We're out.
The Tom Matt Show is produced by Mitch Anderson of Black Circle Studios. Original music from the Source of Light and Power by the Ark of All.